voted the way that you in this district desired. Now, you told me you were opposed to Obamacare. You told me you were opposed to growing government greater than the private sector. And you told me that do not increase the tax burden on our citizens during these difficult economic times. You also said, like me, you were opposed to a Democrat agenda that fully supports unlimited entitlements, same-sex marriage, abortion, and the legalization of certain drugs in this state. I ask you, don't support the status quo that has existed for the last 138 years. Embrace the two-party system. It's time for Arkansas to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We will now proceed with the questions, and Chief Osborne, as we've said, we will start with you. You mentioned in your opening remarks the ranking of Arkansas schools, fifth. Let's start with a question regarding education. It was reported last week, actually it was a couple weeks ago now, that the average reading comprehension score on the SAT among the nation's graduating high school seniors was 496, the worst since 1972. We did get some good news in the report about Arkansas schools. But what specifically, if elected, will you do to promote education in Arkansas?
Well, in order to promote education, you have to have teachers on board. You must have the funds to have well-trained educators in order to accomplish in order to accomplish and for the lack of better terminology, the numbers you're talking about, when these kids graduate high school and they take their exams and they get ready to go to college, we do have some issues. Mark has brought this up a couple of times, and I don't disagree with that. But we have to have the funding to have the teachers trained in order to reach that goal. Now, $57 million was an increase in public education for the last budget. Mark voted against that twice, I believe, and now that's proof right there when it's referred to that I'm a rubber stamp for the governor. Why would anyone vote against a $57 million increase for public education? You hear all kinds of things about vouchers and private education. And my concern, and I think most of the people in this room right here is concerned, is we have to keep public education funded. We have to keep these teachers trained and hold them accountable for these students' education.
Representative Biviano, you mentioned your belief in educational reform in your opening comments. What have you done since taking office 2 years ago to promote education in Arkansas? How do you respond?
Okay. First of all, I've also been selected as the policy chairman of the Republican caucus, so I have the opportunity to influence legislation going forward in the next session. And education is one of the main things that we have worked on to date during the interim. We need to understand where we really are. We need to be honest with the people. We're not ranked fifth in education. If you look at the report that was taken from, it measures it based on 6 categories in the quality assessment report. And the assessment that says we were fifth had to deal with assessments and accountability and transitions, which basically means our ability to follow federal regulations, and we've got nice buildings and we've got good teachers, which we do. But the fact of the matter is the achievement level, the K through 12 achievement level in that same report ranks us as 33rd. Now, we're investing money. We're spending about $5 billion a year, but we have to be honest with the people. We do need reform. And I have worked with major corporations in Arkansas to set up an initiative that is basically hitting the ground right now in Arkansas. One is we need to set up a much more competitive environment amongst our public schools. Much like private business, if you create more competition, you're going to rise above it. Second of all, we need to use our technology systems that will allow us to do more internet training. So in those rural areas, we have an opportunity to send out more quality education to students. And third, we need to create school choice. We need to empower the parents. The parents should be much more involved, and by creating a tax scholarship program, in some cases vouchers, we will create a much more competitive environment in this state, and it will improve education.
Chief Osborne?
Governor Beebe has done everything in his power to properly fund public education in the state of Arkansas. We all know how he feels about public education. I believe in that. I will work with him. I will sit down. We don't always agree on everything, but I assure you on public education, we will agree. My opponent does not. He and I differ on public education.
Thank you, gentlemen. Question number 2. We'll direct this first at Representative Biviano. Governor Beebe recently said that he supports expanding Medicaid eligibility in Arkansas under the federal government's Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. The State Department of Human Services has said recently that expanding Medicaid's eligibility would add 250,000 Arkansas residents to the program and could save the state as much as $370 million over the next several years. White County Medical Center, the largest employer in District 46, has also thrown its support behind the Affordable Care Act and the expansion of Medicaid eligibility in Arkansas. You have said in your opening remarks and in other places that you do not support expanding Medicaid eligibility in Arkansas. Why not?
First of all, let me correct you. I have never said I do not support expanding Medicaid eligibility. What I said, much like the governor did last week, is that we need more facts. And we don't have all the facts. We don't have all the rules and the regulations that's going to be required to expand this program at this point. The fact of the matter is we're $400 million deficit right now. So before we go and start expanding this program, we need to understand where's the money coming from? Where's it going to be paid for? This health care law is extremely complex. But one thing is simple. It's got to be paid for. And even if the federal government's paying for it, ultimately they're going to come back to you as the taxpayer. So how are we going to take care of that deficit, first of all? And then they've said that we can opt out. At the end of 3 years, if we don't like it and the budget's not working, we're going to opt out. I don't know of any entitlement program in the history of our country that we were able to opt out. I would like to hear what's the plan to make that happen. How will you opt out and go and tell those 250,000 people that you gave insurance to that no longer you have insurance because we have a budget crisis? The fact of the matter is we don't know how to pay for our deficit right now. We don't have all the rules and regulations from the federal government, so we can't make an informed decision. And right now there's no pressure to do that. We need to make sure that we have all the facts before we make that decision.
Chief Osborne, Governor Beebe has said that he would have voted against the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act if he were a member of the U.S. Congress in 2010 when they voted on it. Would you have voted for the federal health care law if you were a U.S. Congressman in 2010?
I'm sorry, did you say for or against?
For. Would you have voted for it?
No.
Can you explain why?
You're dealing with like Mark said, that the Affordable Health Care Act is very, very complex. There's no way I can sit here tonight and try to explain it to you because I don't know everything. As my opponent, neither could he. The sticking point is the Medicaid expansion. At least the governor was intelligent enough to request in writing from the federal government that the state could opt out. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is, folks, we're paying for this anyway. You're going to pay for it. I'm going to pay for it. It's a federal law. We can opt out, and we can leave 200 to 250,000 people sitting on the sidelines, and this money will go to California. It'll go to Mississippi. It'll go to Oklahoma. It'll go to all of these Republican states that have now decided that, okay, we'll take some. And they have. And my opponent I think he will tell you they have. So the money is going to have to be paid after 3 years. If we look at this and say, we can't afford this, we can't afford it, we do have an option to opt out. That, as my opponent says, has never happened. Folks, we've never had an opportunity to opt out. We've never been told we could opt out of any federal program like this.
Representative Bibiano, 30 seconds, yes.
First of all, you got to understand how Medicaid works. Obviously, my opponent doesn't. We don't send our money to Texas, Oklahoma, California. It goes into a pool. The federal government funds it. And the fact of the matter is, Arkansas is rated as a welfare or recipient state. That means we receive more federal funding than we pay out. We're doing that with the existing Medicaid population. So expanding it by $250,000 will have no impact whatsoever on the federal dollars. We'll only get what we're going to get. And, you know, they've said we're going to make money on this, and yet they can't produce the financial models that show that. You know, we may want to think if we can figure out a way to make money on it from the Department of Human Services, which has made this claim, we may want to take on Mississippi and Louisiana because they're opting out of the program. That's just the way it works.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I don't get to respond to that one, do I?
You do not. You do not. I'm going to ask you first, however, question number 3, and we will proceed with this question. Chief Osborne, your critics, including Representative Bibiano, have argued that you will be simply a rubber stamp for the governor. Can you distinguish yourself from Governor Beebe in any ways? On what issues, for example, do you disagree with Governor Beebe? How can you distinguish yourself from Governor Beebe?
Probably whether you hit a sand wedge from 115 yards or 45 yards. Governor Beebe is a good personal friend of mine. He has been for 30 years. I think he's done a tremendous job. He has never and would never pressure me to vote a certain way on an issue. He would sit down and talk with me and explain to me his reasoning on an issue, but I can assure you he would never look me in the eye and say, you're going to vote that way. And I mean, other than knowing the man for 30 years and knowing his integrity, that would never be an issue. And I have been referred to as a rubber stamp, and it's been rumored that he put me up to running against Mark because he and Mark have no relationship and they don't speak. Although part of that's true, I can assure you he did not put me up to running against Mark.